Welcome back to The Historian's Tome, where we explore the great stories of the past to help you drift peacefully into sleep. Tonight, we're traveling back thousands of years to discover the fascinating tale of ancient Armenia. Before we begin this journey through time, please take a moment to like this video if you enjoy our content, and don't forget to subscribe for more historical sleep stories. I'm curious to know where you're watching from tonight, and what time it is in your part of the world. Leave a comment below and let us know. Now get comfortable, close your eyes, and let's walk together through the ancient lands of Armenia, where mountains touch the sky and rivers flow through valleys that have witnessed the rise and fall of kingdoms. In the heart of what we now call the South Caucasus, nestled between Europe and Asia, lies a land of incredible beauty and ancient mystery. This is Armenia, a place where towering mountains reach toward heaven and fertile valleys cradle civilizations that stretch back to the very dawn of human history. The Armenian Highlands rise majestically from the earth, dominated by the sacred Mount Ararat. This twin-peaked mountain, standing over 16,000 feet tall, has watched over the Armenian people for millennia. According to tradition, it was here that Noah's Ark came to rest after the Great Flood, making this land one of humanity's earliest homes. Rivers flow like silver threads through this mountainous landscape. The Arax River winds its way through the southern regions, while the Euphrates begins its long journey to the sea from Armenian springs. These waters have nourished the soil and the people for countless generations, creating an oasis of life in a sometimes harsh but always beautiful terrain. The climate here changes with the seasons like a gentle rhythm. Summers bring warmth and growth to the valleys, while winters cover the mountains in pristine snow. Spring arrives with wildflowers painting the meadows in brilliant colors, and autumn brings the harvest that sustains the people through the cold months ahead. Ancient peoples first settled in these highlands thousands of years ago. They were drawn by the rich soil, the abundant water, and the natural protection offered by the mountains. Archaeological evidence shows that humans have called this land home for over 6,000 years, making Armenia one of the oldest continuously inhabited regions on Earth. These early inhabitants were skilled farmers and craftsmen. They learned to work with the volcanic stone found throughout the region, creating tools and building materials that would last for centuries. They domesticated animals and developed agricultural techniques that allowed them to thrive in the highland environment. The strategic location of Armenia made it a crossroads of the ancient world. Trade routes connecting Europe with Asia passed through Armenian valleys and mountain passes. Merchants carrying silk from China, spices from India, and precious metals from the north all traveled these ancient highways, bringing wealth and new ideas to the Armenian people. Around 860 BCE, a powerful kingdom emerged in the Armenian Highlands that would forever change the course of history. This was Urartu, also known as the Kingdom of Van, named after the great fortress city built on the shores of Lake Van. The Urartians were the direct ancestors of the Armenian people, and their legacy still echoes through the mountains today. King Aramu was among the first rulers to unite the highland tribes under the Urartian banner. He built fortresses on strategic hilltops and established a system of governance that would serve as the foundation for future Armenian kingdoms. These fortress cities were marvels of ancient engineering, with massive stone walls and sophisticated water management systems. The capital city of Tushpa, located on the eastern shore of Lake Van, became one of the most important cities in the ancient Near East. Its massive walls rose directly from the lake's edge, creating an almost impregnable fortress. Inside these walls, skilled artisans created beautiful metalwork, intricate jewelry, and elaborate ceremonial objects that demonstrated the wealth and sophistication of Urartian civilization. King Sarduri expanded the kingdom's borders and established the royal dynasty that would rule for over 250 years. He commissioned the carving of royal inscriptions in the Urartian language, using a script adapted from Assyrian cuneiform. These inscriptions, carved into cliff faces and stone monuments, tell the story of a proud and powerful people. Under King Menua, Urartu reached new heights of prosperity and influence. He ordered the construction of an extensive canal system that brought fresh water from mountain springs to the cities and farmlands below. Some of these canals were over 50 miles long and required incredible engineering skill to construct. Many of them continued to function for centuries after the fall of the kingdom. The Urartians were master metalworkers, creating some of the finest bronze and iron objects in the ancient world. Their craftsmen produced elaborate cauldrons, decorative shields, and ritual objects that were traded throughout the Mediterranean and beyond. Archaeological excavations have uncovered Urartian metalwork in places as distant as Greece and Etruscan Italy. Religion played a central role in Urartian society. The people worshipped a pantheon of gods led by Kaldi, the supreme deity of war and the heavens. Temples dedicated to Kaldi and other gods were built throughout the kingdom, often incorporating sacred trees and springs into their design. These religious sites served as centers of community life and places of pilgrimage for people throughout the highlands. The kingdom's military might was legendary throughout the ancient world. Urartian armies, with their iron weapons and horse-drawn chariots, could match the power of the great Assyrian Empire to the south. They built a network of fortresses throughout their territory, each one strategically placed to defend mountain passes and river crossings. As Urartu gradually declined in the 6th century BCE, a new power was rising in the ancient world that would forever change the destiny of the Armenian Highlands. The Persian Empire, under Cyrus the Great, expanded westward and incorporated the Armenian regions into their vast domain. However, rather than destroying local culture, the Persians allowed the Armenian people to maintain their traditions while benefiting from the stability and prosperity of imperial rule. The Armenian noble families, known as the Nakharas, emerged during this period as the ruling class of Armenian society. These aristocratic houses controlled vast estates and commanded their own armies. The most powerful of these families included the Artaxiads, the Arshakids, and the Bagratids, names that would echo through Armenian history for centuries to come. In 331 BCE, Alexander the Great's conquest of the Persian Empire brought Hellenistic influence to Armenia. Greek culture, philosophy, and art began to blend with traditional Armenian customs, creating a unique synthesis that would define Armenian civilization. Cities were built in the Greek style, with theaters, gymnasiums, and marketplaces that served as centers of cultural exchange. After Alexander's death, his empire fragmented, and Armenia found itself caught between the competing powers of the Seleucid Empire to the south and various Hellenistic kingdoms to the west. This period of instability actually strengthened Armenian identity, as local leaders worked to maintain their independence while navigating the complex politics of the post-Alexander world. The most significant development during this era was the emergence of Artaxerxes IV, who founded the Artaxiad dynasty around 190 BCE. Artaxerxes consolidated power by defeating rival claimants and establishing diplomatic relations with Rome, which was rapidly becoming the dominant power in the Mediterranean world. Under Artaxerxes and his successors, Armenia experienced a cultural renaissance. The royal court patronized artists, scholars, and craftsmen who created works of lasting beauty and significance. Armenian architecture developed its distinctive style, combining elements from Persian, Greek, and local traditions to create something entirely unique. The capital city of Artaxata, founded by Artaxerxes I, became known as the Armenian Carthage because of its wealth and commercial importance. Located at the confluence of the Arax and Metsamor rivers, the city controlled important trade routes and served as a center of learning and culture. Historians of the time described its markets filled with goods from across the known world. Trade and commerce flourished under the Artaxiad kings. Armenian merchants established trading posts from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, dealing in silk, precious stones, metals, and crafted goods. The kingdom's strategic position made it an essential link in the trade networks that connected east and west. The most glorious period in ancient Armenian history began in 95 BCE with the ascension of Tigranes II, known to history as Tigranes the Great. Under his rule, Armenia became one of the most powerful kingdoms in the world, stretching from the Caspian Sea to the Mediterranean, and from the Caucasus Mountains to the Syrian desert. Tigranes inherited a kingdom that was already prosperous and well organized. But his ambitions reached far beyond the traditional borders of Armenia. Through a combination of military conquest, strategic alliances, and diplomatic skill, he expanded Armenian territory to include much of modern-day Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, and parts of Iran and Iraq. The king's military campaigns were legendary for their speed and effectiveness. His armies, composed of both Armenian warriors and allied forces, could move quickly through difficult terrain and strike at enemies before they could organize effective resistance. The Armenian heavy cavalry, in particular, became feared throughout the ancient world for their skill and courage in battle. In 83 BCE, Tigranes established a new capital city called Tigranes, which he intended to be the greatest city in the world. Located in what is now southeastern Turkey, Tigranes was designed to rival Rome and Alexandria in its grandeur. The city featured magnificent palaces, theaters, libraries, and gardens that attracted visitors from across the ancient world. The king populated his new capital by relocating entire communities from conquered territories. Greeks, Jews, Arabs, and people from many other nations came to live in Tigranes, creating a cosmopolitan city where different cultures mixed and flourished. This diversity became one of the hallmarks of Tigranes' empire. Art and learning flourished under Tigranes' patronage. The royal court attracted poets, historians, philosophers, and scientists from throughout the Hellenistic world. Armenian became a written language during this period, with scholars developing a rich literature that drew from both local oral traditions and the written cultures of Greece and Persia. The king's marriage to Cleopatra of Syria, daughter of Antiochus VIII, strengthened Armenia's position in the complex web of Hellenistic politics. This alliance brought Syrian territories under Armenian control and established Armenia as a major player in Mediterranean affairs. Tigranes earned the title King of Kings, a designation that reflected his dominion over numerous smaller kingdoms and principalities. He minted coins bearing this title, and these coins circulated throughout his vast empire, spreading Armenian influence and prestige to distant lands. The prosperity of this golden age was based not only on military conquest, but also on wise administration and economic development. Tigranes established efficient systems of taxation and governance that allowed local communities to maintain their customs while contributing to the empire's wealth and strength. However, this period of glory could not last forever. The expanding power of Rome eventually brought Armenia into conflict with the Roman legions, setting the stage for the challenges that would define the next chapter of Armenian history. The collision between Armenia and Rome was inevitable as both powers sought to dominate the ancient world. In 69 BCE, the Roman general Lucullus invaded Armenia and besieged Tigranes. After fierce fighting, the Romans captured the city, marking the beginning of Armenia's long struggle to maintain independence between two great empires. Tigranes was forced to abandon his imperial ambitions and retreat to the Armenian heartland. However, he proved to be as skilled in diplomacy as he had been in conquest. Through negotiations with Rome, he managed to maintain Armenian independence while accepting Roman suzerainty over his reduced kingdom. The arrangement with Rome established a pattern that would define Armenian foreign policy for centuries. Armenia became a buffer state between Rome and Persia, often changing allegiances as the balance of power shifted between these two superpowers. This precarious position required Armenian kings to be master diplomats, playing one empire against the other to preserve their nation's autonomy. Under Roman influence, Armenian society underwent significant changes. Roman architectural styles influenced the construction of new cities and buildings. Latin loanwords entered the Armenian language, and Roman legal concepts were incorporated into Armenian law. However, the Armenian people maintained their distinct cultural identity despite these foreign influences. King Artavasdes II, who ruled from 55 to 34 BCE, was an accomplished poet and playwright who wrote tragedies in the Greek style. His court became a center of learning, where Armenian, Greek, and Roman scholars worked together to preserve and expand human knowledge. This cultural flowering demonstrated Armenia's ability to absorb foreign influences while maintaining its unique character. The struggle between Rome and Persia for control over Armenia intensified during the 1st century CE. Armenian kings were installed and deposed as the fortunes of war shifted back and forth. Despite this political instability, Armenian culture continued to develop and flourish. In 114 CE, the Roman Emperor Trajan conquered Armenia and made it a Roman province. However, Roman direct rule proved difficult to maintain in the mountainous terrain, and the Armenians never fully accepted foreign domination. Constant rebellions and the practical difficulties of governing such a distant territory led Rome to restore Armenian autonomy within a few years. The 3rd century brought new challenges as a revitalized Persian Empire under the Sassanid dynasty began pushing westward. Armenia once again found itself on the front lines of imperial conflict, with Armenian armies fighting sometimes as Roman allies and sometimes as Persian vassals. Throughout this period of political turmoil, Armenian merchants continued to play an important role in international trade. Armenian trading communities established themselves in cities throughout the Roman and Persian empires, creating networks that would prove crucial to Armenia's economic survival during difficult times. The constant warfare and political uncertainty took its toll on Armenian society, but it also strengthened Armenian identity. Faced with the threat of absorption by foreign empires, the Armenian people developed a fierce loyalty to their homeland and traditions that would sustain them through centuries of foreign domination. The most transformative event in Armenian history occurred in the early 4th century CE, when Armenia became the first nation in the world to officially adopt Christianity as its state religion. This momentous decision, made around 301 CE by King Tiridates III, would define Armenian identity for all time and set Armenia apart from its neighbors. The story of Armenia's conversion begins with Saint Gregory the Illuminator, a nobleman who had been imprisoned by King Tiridates for his Christian faith. According to tradition, Gregory spent 13 years in a deep pit called Kor Virap, surviving through divine intervention and the secret assistance of a Christian woman who lowered food to him. When King Tiridates fell seriously ill, his sister had a vision that only the imprisoned Gregory could heal him. The king reluctantly agreed to release Gregory, who not only cured the monarch's ailment, but also converted him to Christianity. This miraculous healing led to the conversion of the entire royal court, and subsequently the entire Armenian nation. The adoption of Christianity brought profound changes to Armenian society. Pagan temples were converted into Christian churches, and new religious architecture began to appear throughout the kingdom. Armenian architects developed a distinctive style of church building that combined traditional Armenian construction techniques with Christian symbolic requirements. Saint Mesrop Mashtots, a scholar and monk, created the Armenian alphabet in 405 CE, giving the Armenian people their own written script for the first time. This 39-letter alphabet was specifically designed to accommodate the sounds of the Armenian language and made it possible to translate Christian scriptures and liturgies into Armenian. The translation of the Bible into Armenian marked the beginning of a golden age of Armenian literature. Scholars and monks working in monasteries throughout Armenia produced translations of Greek and Syriac Christian texts, creating a rich theological and philosophical literature in the Armenian language. The establishment of the Armenian Apostolic Church created a powerful institution that would preserve Armenian identity through centuries of foreign domination. The Catholicos, or Supreme Patriarch of the Armenian Church, became a figure of immense importance in Armenian society, often wielding more real power than the political rulers. Christian Armenia developed strong connections with other Christian communities throughout the Byzantine Empire and beyond. Armenian merchants, pilgrims, and scholars traveled widely, carrying Armenian Christian culture to distant lands and bringing new ideas back to Armenia. The monastery schools that emerged during this period became centers of learning and cultural preservation. Monks copied manuscripts, taught students, and maintained the traditions of Armenian Christianity, even during times of political chaos and foreign invasion. Despite adopting Christianity, Armenia maintained many of its pre-Christian cultural traditions. Ancient festivals were given Christian meanings. Traditional music and dance continued to flourish, and Armenian craftsmanship retained its distinctive character while incorporating Christian symbols and themes. The Christianization of Armenia also had important political implications. It aligned Armenia more closely with the Byzantine Empire and created tensions with Zoroastrian Persia. This religious divide would become another factor in the complex relationship between Armenia and its powerful neighbors. As the sun set on the ancient period of Armenian history, the foundations had been laid for a remarkable civilization that would endure through countless challenges. The mountains still stood guard over the Armenian people. The ancient rivers still flowed through their valleys, and the spirit of this ancient nation had found new expression through Christian faith and Armenian letters. The story of ancient Armenia is one of resilience, creativity, and the enduring power of cultural identity. From the early Urartian kingdoms to the golden age of Tigranes the Great, from the struggles between Rome and Persia to the dawn of Christian civilization, the Armenian people had established themselves as one of the great nations of the ancient world. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, let your mind wander through those ancient Armenian valleys, where the echoes of history still whisper in the mountain winds. Dream of golden ages and heroic kings, of scholars creating alphabets and monks copying sacred texts. Dream of a people who carved their place in history through courage, wisdom, and an unshakable love for their mountain homeland. The story of ancient Armenia reminds us that even small nations can leave great marks on the pages of history, and that the human spirit, nurtured by faith and tradition, can endure through any challenge. Sleep well, and let the ancient peace of the Armenian Highlands bring you rest until the morning light returns.